I have 11 o'clock Central Time, so I think we will go ahead and get started. You are also welcome to go ahead and click that little X at the right-hand corner of your poll just to move that out of the way. But welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here today. We would like to begin by thanking the Department of the Air Force School Liaison Program for making today's webinar, Challenging Behaviors, Discipline versus Punishment, possible. Thank you so much for taking our poll. I could see that we have parents joining us and professionals. That is wonderful. We're glad you're here. We always welcome professionals who work with military connected children to our parent trainings, and we know you will find the information and tips we present helpful. Please note that our MSEC parent webinars have been designed with parents as the target audience. Before we introduce ourselves, we wanted to share with you a bit more about MSEC and its mission. The Military Child Education Coalition, MSEC, is a nonprofit organization established more than 25 years ago, and our mission is to support all military-connected children by educating, advocating, and collaborating to resolve education challenges associated with the military lifestyle. In 2005, MSEC formalized support and programming for military-connected parents so they may be empowered, informed, and proactive in supporting their children's educational journey. We strive to deliver informative and interactive webinars that address academic, social, and emotional issues associated with the military family lifestyle. Our vision is every military-connected child is college, work, and life ready. My name is Emily Barton. I have been with MSEC for the last 6 years as a parent educator and part of the webinar team. I am also the community coordinator for San Antonio. My husband is active duty Air Force. He's been in for 25 years, and we PCS to San Antonio about a year ago and are enjoying it here. We have 2 military connected children. Our daughter is 21. She's a rising senior in college, and our son is 19, and he's a rising sophomore in college. And now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Sonia.
Good morning, everyone. At least it still is technically morning here where I am near Huntsville, Alabama. We've been here about four years now. My husband was an active duty Army soldier. I still have to get used to saying was because he just retired as of December after 31 years. So we've lived this crazy, fun military lifestyle for quite a while and dealt with all the challenges and the benefits that come with that. We do have 2 military connected kiddos. My oldest is starting his sophomore year at Alabama here shortly. So roll tide. I always need to throw that out there since that's where my child and my money go. My youngest is going into his senior year. In fact, he just started here in Alabama yesterday for his senior year. We start early. So he is very happy that we are now retired and that he is finishing out his high school career in one place. I have been with Military Child Education Coalition for about 2.5 years. I work on the webinar team, I work as an educator, and I also am a community coordinator here in my local area. With that, we do have a couple of administrative announcements we'd like to share with you before we jump into the webinar. At the end of our webinar today, we're going to invite you to take our survey about today's presentation, and we would appreciate it if you take that 2 to 3 minutes that it will require for you to give us your feedback. That's a method that we use just to let our funders know how we're doing and to see if there's things that we need to modify with these webinars so we can continue offering that very best training opportunities possible for those of you that we serve, those military connected parents and those that work with military connected children. You should see a chat box on your screen. This is a place where you can ask us questions and interact with us. And we're going to be asking for some feedback during today's webinar. So we really appreciate it when we get to learn a little bit more about our audience. So please utilize that feature. In that chat box, there is a PDF file titled Downloadable Resources. If you can, go ahead and download that and save it to your computer because this contains the resources and information relating to today's webinar that Emily and I will reference. Now, if you are joining us on your phone, you're not going to be able to download those resources, but if you use that chat box to send Emily or I a private message with your email address, we'll be sure we get that over to you as soon as possible. Hopefully during the webinar, but if not, definitely at the end. Please note this webinar is being recorded. You can always view the recording later if you want to review the material or experience any technical difficulties during the presentation. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We would love to know a little bit about you. We said we'd like to learn about our audience and get some feedback. So we do have another poll there that Emily's pulled up for us. And we just want to know, what's the age range of your children? Emily, we let you guys know that ours are college. So we've kind of lived through all these ages and stages now. So we do see that we've got some in every age group as it's all coming in. So that's fantastic. We're going to talk about all the different age ranges today and what you can typically expect and what are some good strategies in each age range. So it's nice to see that our audience covers all the groups we're going to discuss today. So thank you for taking that poll and letting us know a little bit about you and your children. We appreciate it. So let's start by saying that we've all seen children misbehaving at every age and stage of development. It's perfectly normal for children to show defiance or sometimes lose control of their emotions. Exhibiting those challenging behaviors is just a part of growing up, but this conduct should be one they grow out of with your support. All behavior, whether it's desired or undesired, are ways that children communicate. And we really want to stress that challenging behavior is not due to a bad child or bad parenting. It may be the result of many different elements. So let's talk about our learning objectives and what all we are going to discuss today. By the end of the presentation, you should be able to understand what discipline and punishment are and how they differ. You should be able to identify typical triggers for challenging behavior and discuss how life stressors, such as the military family life, can contribute to behavior changes. And then we want you to be able to apply age-appropriate, effective strategies to manage and reduce challenging behaviors and know when and how to seek professional support. So with that, we have our first discussion question that we would love to get some input in our chat box from you. Can you share with us a behavior in that chat box that makes parenting challenging? Something you've experienced or that you have saw other parents experiencing and dealing with? Just what are some of those behaviors that you would classify as challenging? We're going to give you just a couple minutes to go ahead and share some of those thoughts with us. Back talking. Yes, I live in teenager land. Back talking is one that you hear often. Tantrums, yelling, yes. Social media. There are lots of challenging behaviors that come along with social media. We are definitely living in a different age and stage at this point. Yelling, yes. Emotional outburst, yes. And I think those emotional outbursts don't go away. Even the older our kids get, they're still learning how to deal with their emotions and how to handle those big feelings that come with everything. Kicking, hitting with tantrums, not accepting no. That's a good one. I hear that often, you know, where you're trying to just get to that yes and find different ways, or continuing asking, continuing coming up with reasons why I should say yes. So that's one that you don't hear often, but it definitely is challenging when your child won't take no for an answer. So I love these that you guys have all shared. There's some great experiences, and we're going to hopefully address some of these and give you some tools to work through some of these behaviors. That, as we've seen in our chat box in those answers, challenging behaviors can vary wildly depending on the age, personality, and environment of the child or the adolescent. In very young children, which I know some of you guys have in that poll, those toddlers and preschoolers, you can see those tantrums, biting even, hitting. One of my children was a headbutter when he was little. He would ram you and headbutt everyone, running away, screaming, or refusing to follow directions. These behaviors can stem from several things like frustration. Overstimulation is a big one with these younger kids, difficulty with transitioning from one task to the next, or having a lack of just the verbal communication skills to discuss how they're feeling. For example, a 3-year-old who throws blocks across the room may be expressing their feelings of being overwhelmed in the only way they know how, because they don't know how to label it or what they're experiencing. In school age kids, those behaviors might shift a bit. They might start talking back, breaking rules on purpose, refusing to do homework, or becoming disruptive in class. You might even see stealing, lying, or in some cases, even some early signs of anxiety. Your school age children might even say or act like they are depressed and withdraw from participating in things like extracurricular activities, or they may not want to go to school or finish their homework. They may even refuse to eat together with the rest of the family. By adolescence, those challenging behaviors can become even more complex. You've got those teenagers who don't want to talk, don't want to listen to mom and dad. As teens, they're striving to be independent. They may become defiant, verbally aggressive, or just shut down emotionally. They may not only say that they don't want to do their homework or go to school, but at that age, they may actually act on those thoughts and skip classes and not complete their homework. Some teens may start engaging in some risky behaviors like substance use or breaking curfews. It's important to remember that these are often symptoms of something bigger at this age, like stress from school or peer issues, identity struggles. They're trying to grow up, figure out who they are, or maybe possibly some underlying mental health concerns. So just remember that even though those teens are striving for independence, they still need some structure, guidance, and someone to believe in them, just like our younger children. They're not beyond needing that structure yet. In a nutshell, these challenging behaviors are any repeated pattern of behaviors that interfere with learning or that interfere with engaging in positive interactions with peers and other adults. These behaviors can also be defined as when a child does not respond to or change their behavior, even when you're giving them appropriate cues to let them know that what they're doing is not okay. For example, like simply even saying to them, your behavior is unacceptable. If they're not self-correcting, then these can be those challenging behaviors. And these types of behaviors can leave parents feeling overwhelmed, unsure, and even helpless at times. So it can be a lot for a parent to work through. These challenging behaviors can escalate over time. There are many reasons why they may continue to get worse. Sometimes a child's needs aren't being met emotionally, socially, or developmentally. They may lack those coping skills. They just don't know how to handle all those emotions. They may feel unsafe, unheard, or unsupported. Family stress, including things like financial strains or relationship conflicts between the adults in their life, or even the prolonged absence of a service member in our military lifestyle, like those deployments or those PCS moves. These can all increase the likelihood of those behavior problems and them continuing to worsen. It's very important to note that when we respond with inconsistent expectations or unclear boundaries, it can make kids feel even more out of control. So these are some of the things that we're going to discuss today, and we're going to talk about how to work through some of these challenging behaviors. So for that, I'm going to turn it back over to Emily, who's going to talk about what happens. Why do these behaviors come about sometimes? Emily?
Exactly. So when we as parents address children's challenging behavior by focusing only on the behaviors that they're exhibiting, like those tantrums and the back talking, but we ignore the root cause of it, it makes it harder to break the cycle. If we can figure out why the behavior is occurring, we can begin to learn how to respond differently and act effectively to change the behavior rather than just managing it. We'll now take a look at some of the common reasons or triggers behind misbehavior. So, one trigger is attention seeking. For our younger children, they're still learning how to express themselves verbally and respectfully and know what is and what isn't acceptable behavior. They quickly learn that if they act out, they will get the attention that they crave. And that craving is sometimes associated with children just wanting to be comforted. The desire for attention can really be a motivator for children as they grow older. They still need that attention. Children may be motivated to misbehave because they want something from us. You may see this in the checkout line at the commissary while you're walking right next to that candy. You might see a lot of misbehavior. Or our children act out when they're frustrated. Some kids just give up. Others may get angry when they can't figure out how to do something and they're feeling frustrated, like trying to build a tall Lego tower or something of that nature. Then avoidance. Children also act out when they want to avoid a situation, such as when your child doesn't want to go to bed, they want to avoid it, they act out. Or when your teen doesn't want to put down their video game controller and do their homework, they're just avoiding their homework, so they just don't want to put that down. Another trigger is they're lacking impulse control. Our young children often lack that impulse control. Yet, even as they grow up and our teens become more independent, they absolutely can still lack the emotional maturity that they need to make informed, thoughtful decisions. I know Sonia and I both have those teenagers, and their brains are not fully developed. I hate to say it, but even our teenagers don't lack that impulse control. The parts of the brain that control decision making and impulse control haven't fully developed. We are sharing a couple of links in your chat box. One is a video that talk about the preteen and teenage brain. If you're interested in learning more, we encourage you to take a look at those resources. We'll now go into a little more detail about triggers. We'll start with these environmental triggers. Transitioning between activities is a situation that often triggers challenging behavior from our children. These are times when the child is engaged in an activity and then has to stop and start a new activity or has to move to a new setting, like moving from playtime to homework time, going from bath time to bedtime, or from texting with your friends after school to doing your chores. So that transition can be a trigger. Too much screen time is another common trigger. Our teens, especially, may suffer from lack of sleep because they're spending too much time on their phones, or they're getting woken up at night by notifications or messages. Those little pings, they're very disruptive to sleep. Lack of sleep affects our ability to control our behavior, so that can make things even worse. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends using their new 5 C's approach to guide your children toward the appropriate amount of media usage. And you can see that on the right-hand side of your screen. So these 5 C's for media usage include first, the child. You have to consider the child. Every child is different and they're different ages. The content. What are they watching? Is it just something that goes by real quickly, something that has lots of video to it that can affect what's going on? The third C is calm. Is the media usage calming? What other ways can they calm themselves? The fourth C is crowding out. Is that media usage taking the place of other activities that they should be doing instead? And the fifth C is communication. So those 5 C's can be very helpful when looking at media usage for your children. Sometimes challenging behavior stems from children having difficulties, such as being bullied at school or on social media. Or your child may be just having problems at school, having trouble academically. So challenging behavior can stem from that. It can also stem from health issues, especially if the challenging behavior is affecting your child's ability to cope with everyday life. They may display anxiety, depression, or may even display violence. They may try to hurt themselves or others. In these situations, it's absolutely critical to seek medical help as quickly as possible if you are seeing this. It's also important that we consider the military lifestyle and how it may contribute to a child's behavior. Things can be especially complicated for our families within the military community because our children are often dealing with frequent moves, changes in schools, losing connections to peers, having to say goodbye to friends, and then trying to fit in again at a new school. They experience absences of the service member and may feel uncertainty about the future. Deployments, reintegration, and the emotional toll of military life can all contribute to an increase in behavior issues. When there are changes in the family, such as a deployment or moving to a new area, our children can react with those challenging behaviors to help them deal with the new situation and the associated stress. The transitions that our children go through can disrupt a child's sense of stability and manifest as behavioral challenges. For example, a child may show anxiety related aggression or clinginess due to a parent's absence. A 2023 study suggests that children in military families were more likely to show internalizing behaviors like anxiety or sadness, as well as externalizing behaviors like aggression or rule breaking, especially around deployment periods. But the good news is that strong family connections, open communication within a family, and strong support, including help from school counselors and military family life counselors or MFLACs, can truly make a big difference for our children. At MSEC, we have an acronym that we like to use to describe four other elements that may trigger challenging behavior in children. The acronym is HALT. The H stands for hungry. The A stands for angry. The L stands for lonely. And the T stands for tired. If your younger child misbehaves, check to see if any of these four elements apply. You can even teach this acronym to your children and teens so that they can do an internal check and learn how to self-regulate their emotions. If they're upset or acting out, ask them, are you hungry? Do you need something to eat? Are you feeling angry about something that has happened? Do you feel lonely? Are you feeling tired? Did you get enough sleep last night? And this really works well with us as adults as well. I know when I'm hungry, I might not be, as kind as I would if I was feeling well fed. So this is something that we can all use. Using that HALT acronym is also a great way for us as parents to model how we deal with our emotions. When we do admit that, yes, I'm upset because I do need a little snack or I didn't get much sleep last night. So it's a good idea to sort of talk this out with your children and share how you're using these terms to help explain behaviors that may be happening. So now I'm going to pass it over to Sonia to talk a little bit more about these behaviors.
Okay, so we've talked about the behaviors, we've talked about what can trigger them, but let's look at the type of impact that they can have on the child and the relationships around them. We all understand the longer a negative behavior continues, the worse it can be for the child and the family. When the children act out repeatedly, those effects will ripple even beyond the home. At school, these types of behaviors can lead to decreased academic performance because the child may be having less focus at school. That's going to result in lower grades. If the child's not focused in school and doing what they're supposed to be doing during class time, they may be getting attention from teachers, but not the type of attention they want, the negative behavior. These types of experiences going on in school can also affect relationships with peers in the classrooms, and those can turn those relationships negative as well. So they can have these challenging behaviors can have impacts on the relationship of the child and the teacher and the child with their peers. Now at home, as parents, you may feel exhausted. You may be embarrassed by your child's behavior or feel guilty. Sometimes that guilt can lead to harsher punishments or withdrawal, just giving up because you don't know how to handle it or what to do as a parent. These situations can just make things worse. For children themselves, those behavioral challenges can interfere with personal development, or growth, and reaching goals, or being able to take advantage of opportunities around them. So this child who exhibits these challenging behaviors can eventually become isolated and even possibly depressed. So not impacts that we want to see happening to our children and our family. So let's talk about how can we break this cycle. So a good place to start is just with a bit of parental detective work. So consider keeping track of when and at what time these challenging behaviors occur, because the first thing you need to figure out is why, so that you can address them. So on the slide, you see an example of a chart for a young child. When your child or your teen has an outburst, write down when it happened. In addition to noting the event and the time, also write down what happened right before that challenging behavior, because this will hopefully allow you to identify what triggered the behavior, what possibly could have happened. Also jot down how you responded, what type of discipline or consequence was used, and whether or not it worked or not. Now, the idea of a chart like this, a table like this, or you can just use a notebook and a pen and a piece of paper to take some notes, but be sure you include this type of information, because by gathering this type of information, the idea is that after a while, you're going to begin to see a pattern. You're going to know that this behavior always occurs right before lunch. So maybe your child is hangry. Hungry. So I get hangry when I'm hungry. So maybe that's what's happening. Or maybe you're going to notice that it's right at bedtime when they have to stop playing video games with friends or playing board games or playing with toys and get ready for bed. So then that trigger could be that change, that transition time that Emily mentioned. But just basically, you're going to see a pattern usually if you take this data down and look at it. And this will allow you to identify situations when your child is most likely to exhibit these types of behaviors. Now, you can tailor this chart to your own needs so that you can pinpoint more clearly what's happening and when. Then once you know why and when it's usually happening, you can figure out a strategy, employing more effective tools to handle the challenging behavior, and determine how to possibly avoid it in the future. So that's one way to start managing these behaviors, identifying the trigger. Now let's talk about consequences, which is what a lot of us wonder about. What's going to work? Discipline is what we want to talk about first. This is about teaching, guiding, and nurturing self-control. The word itself comes from the Latin word disciplina, which means instruction or training. So unlike punishment, which is reactive and often about control, discipline is about helping children learn how to behave responsibly, understand consequences, and handle emotions. In other words, it's proactive and rooted in connection. It's teaching children how to behave, not just telling them what not to do. When we discipline effectively, we set those clear and consistent expectations, and that we provide support and coaching, and we remain emotionally regulated ourselves, which can be difficult sometimes in the heat of the moment. We're helping these children build lifelong skills like empathy, self-control, and accountability. Now, we do want to say that discipline isn't about being permissive. It's just proactive. It's about being firm and kind. Now let's look at punishment. Punishment, on the other hand, is typically the opposite. It's reactive, and it's aimed at suppressing behavior through fear or discomfort. That might mean things like taking away privileges, giving a timeout, or even using harsh language or physical force. Unfortunately, punishment rarely teaches children how to behave differently. Instead, it can damage that trust between the parent and the child. It can increase anxiety and even escalate the undesired behaviors we're trying to curb in the first place. Experts now caution against using punitive techniques. Research suggests that such tactics don't foster learning. Instead, they promote aggression, shame, and weaker self-control. Punishment may produce short-term compliance, but it doesn't really support that healthy long-term emotional or behavioral growth that we're trying to get to. On the other hand, discipline, when proactive, when done right, does. Emily?
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies that can help with challenging behaviors for all children. One of the main strategies is to have clear boundaries and rules that your child understands. Without rules, your child may not know that the behavior is unacceptable, and they may persist with the behavior as a way to express what they want. If your child is breaking the rules, tell them it is not okay. Remind them of the consequence, and depending on the situation, give them a second chance to stop and correct the behavior. If the challenging behavior continues, then you'll want to use a logical, age-appropriate consequence. In general, it's better to immediately start the consequence instead of having a delayed start, especially with younger children, so that they can connect their behavior with that consequence. It's very important that we as parents are consistent with consequences so that the child knows always what is expected of them. Natural consequences can often be the best way to teach a lesson, but it can sometimes be the hardest strategy to follow. We really need to allow those natural consequences to occur. If your child doesn't want to take a coat to school in the winter and the teacher has a rule that says they are not allowed to go out for recess unless they have a coat, you need to follow through with that. Let them not take their coat to school. If they don't want to take their coat, they know the rule is they won't be able to go out to recess. They need to understand that the rules are associated with those consequences. Also, balance consequences with incentives and rewards. An important part of discipline is teaching children how to regulate themselves. An incentive can help with this. Think about creating a rewards chart. School-age children love getting rewards and they don't like to lose. So something as simple as stickers on a sticker chart can be a powerful tool in steering the proper behavior. However, we don't want to rely solely on incentives. Discipline is about teaching and guiding with kindness. Modeling and setting an example is an important method. Our children learn more through what we do than what we say. So we really want to set that example that we want them to display. We also want to reinforce positive behavior. Many of us are more likely to not say anything when our children behave well. However, when they misbehave, we give them our attention. This can backfire because, as we talked about earlier, some challenging behavior is triggered by children wanting our behavior, wanting our attention. If they do something well and behave well, we want to give our children attention and let them know what you like about their behavior. You might say, "Thank you so much for using your inside voice." Or notice and show your appreciation when your teenager puts away the dishes. Practice gratitude and kindness and appreciate those positive experiences. Point out your children's strengths. So we'd like to know now, what strategies or tools have you found to be helpful when addressing challenging behavior? Perhaps there has been something that has worked well with one of your children. We'd love to hear your responses. And as you're sort of thinking through this, I can let you know one tool that I used when my son was probably in middle school. Um, he had a really hard time transitioning from one activity to another. And I used a little device called a time timer. It was a little clock that had a minute hand that when you pulled it to the left, all of the time turned red. So it was a visual reminder for him to see how much time he had left on a task. And that visual really made a difference for him. Let's see. Okay, we have one of our participants wrote that with toddlers, allow them to throw the tantrum in a safe space and wait until they're ready to talk and give them a hug and some comfort. Absolutely. I think that is a great way to handle things with toddlers. And you do want to give them that comforting hug that can make a big difference. And Gwen wrote, connect with the child and redirect. Absolutely. I think that is a fantastic way to handle that. To me, wrote, natural consequences. If there was a tantrum in the store, you leave. Absolutely. You can for sure do that. I have done that with my children when they were little, enough change of setting. And let's see, allowing them to let out their big feelings. Yes, and they do have big feelings and they may not understand them. They don't know how to put a word with the feelings yet. Allow them to let them out. Absolutely. That's wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing. So we will continue on with sharing some of these strategies. One of the best strategies, but perhaps the most difficult, is to stay calm. Regardless of the challenging behavior or how your child or teen is acting, you want to stay calm. I realize this is easier said than done. However, when we get upset, we go into a downward spiral and allow the child's behavior to take control over our own behavior. You might be boiling inside, but try to remain calm and cool on the outside. Take a deep breath and handle the challenging behavior in as calm a manner as you possibly can. It may be necessary for you to change the setting and take a break just to de-escalate the situation. There's nothing wrong with letting the child know that you're getting upset with the behavior and that you need to take a break. Routines also give our children a feeling of security and a sense of order. A routine helps establish expectations and creates a neutral household. When our children don't have a routine, their behavior will reflect stress and that lack of routine. So the routine is really important to have in place. And then use those teachable moments, which can work for children of all age groups. Use books to show how characters are displaying perhaps challenging behavior. Then you can discuss that behavior and the possible solutions with your child. You can also use TV shows or videos that you watch together, and then you can pause the show and discuss what is happening right then and talk about possible solutions. So that might be a good thing for you to implement at home. Sometimes our children simply want validation, to know that their feelings are okay. You might say, it's okay to be upset. I feel upset sometimes too. Be understanding of their situation, but at the same time, you need to let them know that their behavior may not be acceptable. These words of validation can be very helpful in supporting your parent-child relationship. They know then that you understand them. We are now going to share a short video that highlights some additional strategies on how to remain calm.
Ever feel like your consequences keep going up and all you feel like is, my kid still doesn't care? It's a really common problem, and we'll start first with an easy fix. Most of the time, when consequences keep getting bigger, it means we keep getting more emotionally involved. So, one of the biggest things to do is when you're giving a consequence is make sure everybody's back to emotional zero. So when a negative behavior occurs, signal them this doesn't work, and then let everyone take a time out or a brain break. When you're going to come back and give consequences, you need to be in a place where you feel neutral. Sometimes you need to call a friend, do something else, go yell in the room, whatever it takes. But once you're neutral, that's when you set consequences. Okay, so one of the easiest systems is actually to have the consequences ahead of time. Make a minor and a major list of things that people can't do in your house. So some minor things could be being disrespectful at the table, some things like watching TV when you've been told not to. Major things are more like curfew problems or high levels of disrespect, or certainly something like hitting a sibling. Know ahead of time what the penalty is. So minor things can be losing 15 minutes of electronics. Major consequences include things like being grounded or potentially having breaks from friends or other activities that they like. Once you know the consequences and everyone is calm, then you sit down and deliver what they are. A lot of people want a big emotional response when they deliver a consequence. Kids tend to move on quickly, and as adults, we feel all that hurt, all that frustration. So until you're neutral, it's likely you're going to keep building and building and building. Effective consequences actually last short periods of time, but aren't fun. So if your kid is continuing to dawdle around and isn't getting something done, what I like to do is say, actually, you owe me this time. So you owe me the 15 minutes that you were doing something when we had another place to be. But I get to pick when it is. So for instance, if you have a favorite TV show, then I get the first 15 minutes of the TV show. The key is that it's not that your show starts 15 minutes later, it's that you miss the first 15. What about removing privileges? This is a big one for teenagers. This is a place where escalations really do get out of control. If you are in conflict in the moment, you tend to say, okay, that's another 15 or that's another 3 days. So first off, we're back to neutral. If they're continuing to escalate, then you can add on time, but it's more effective to add small pieces of time, hours rather than days. Because if you get to the point where someone has a multi-week consequence, the only game in town at this point is to beat you at caring less or being upset for all of those pieces. The key for a consequence, short amounts of time that are unpleasant and are decided on long before there's a whole bunch of conflict. If you feel like you've tried all of these things, you're neutral when it happens, you're using agreed upon consequences, and you feel like things keep escalating out of control, it's a good time to get more help. Talk to your pediatrician or child psychiatrist and see what's happening emotionally. Sometimes kids don't feel like they're being heard in the moment or feel like there are pieces you don't understand. What we really want to make sure is that behaviors are clearly yes or no, but the emotional subtleties and the need for connection and love are happening consistently.
I really like that video. I think it's very helpful. We have put the link to that in the chat box if you'd like to go back and watch that again, but I think she has some great ideas. We are now going to address more specific strategies for each of the 3 age groups. We're going to start with our younger children, then talk about school-age children and teenagers. So we'll start now with our young children, and I'm going to pass it over to Sonia.
Okay, so for those young children, it's often helpful for them to learn to name what they are feeling. Kids, even young kids, can experience complex emotions like adults, but they don't often have the vocabulary to express their feelings and may therefore act out in frustration or anger. So one way to help your children learn to name their feelings is to talk about what you are feeling when you're frustrated or angry or upset. So for example, if you're rushing around in the morning for breakfast and you drop that orange juice container and it spills all over the floor, you can say, I'm feeling really frustrated because now I have a mess on the floor to clean up and we're short on time. You can even ask your child to grab that paper towel and to help you clean up. Afterwards, once it's all cleaned up and we're back to that state of calm, you can explain that you were really frustrated, but it wouldn't have helped to overreact in the situation. Getting angry and yelling wouldn't have cleaned up that orange juice off the floor. It would still be there. Modeling that correct behavior for your child by exhibiting self-control and asking for help solved the problem, and it served as a learning moment for your child, because as we said earlier, children learn more from watching what you do instead of what you say. So modeling that correct behavior. Afterwards, be sure you thank your child, because remember we talked about recognizing that good behavior, not just commenting on the bad. So thank your child for helping you clean up and let them know that when they helped you, that helped in a frustrating situation and made you feel better. Another way to help your child learn to manage their emotions is modeling ways to calm down in challenging behaviors and situations. For example, if you're frustrated in that school traffic because the lights are turning green, but nobody's moving because all the cars are blocking the lights in the morning. I know school just started here yesterday morning, like I mentioned, so there's crazy traffic going into the elementary schools and crazy traffic going into the middle schools, and everybody's trying to drop their kid and other people are trying to get to work. So it can be very frustrating. If you're in that situation and your child is in the car, talk about how you're feeling and make a plan to deal with the situation. You could say, I'm feeling really frustrated right now with all this traffic because I have to get you to school and everything's at a standstill. And then talk about a way to work through those feelings. Ask your child to help you calm down by taking 10 deep breaths with you, and then do it. And they'll see how just using some type of tool can help you calm down. So you're frustrated in the moment, pause, take those 10 deep breaths, because you're sitting in that traffic anyway, you're not going to move. So show them a way to calm down, whatever that may be. Feelings and behavior are connected. So when you can name that feeling, your child can learn over time to identify what they're feeling. Once they're able to talk about them, they can learn to control their behavior, which is what someone had actually said in our chat box earlier that we had talked about. When they can let those big feelings out, they can learn to self-regulate. And then that takes away some of those big reactions because now they can talk about what they're feeling. You can also offer your child options for how to manage those strong emotions. If there's situations that make your child really upset, for example, if it's stopping those video games and coming to dinner, or turning off the TV because it's bedtime and they're really, really upset, help them learn ways to get that frustration out. In our chat box earlier, somebody said, let them have that tantrum if it's in a safe space, and then talk about it. In the heat of the moment, when your child is really frustrated, they can't think logically through their feelings. Let them get all those big emotions out in some way physically, and then you can come back and talk about it. Some good ideas, depending on the age, maybe, go run around the backyard 3 times. For your teenager, it might be, hey, go over to the gym and work out, and then come back and we'll talk about it. Get a stress relief ball and squeeze it. If you're sitting there, if you're somewhere where you can't get up and go run around the backyard, maybe have them draw a picture that shows that they're angry, shows their feelings. Or, my older kids' music is something that really helps them calm down. So maybe if they're upset with something that we talked about or something that they're not allowed to do, they might just need to go to their room for a while and listen to their music. And then when they're back to that state of calm, like we talked about in our video, and I'm back to a state of calm, then we can talk about it. So it's an important point that you're trying to teach their child is that there are many options for expressing their feelings in a healthy, non-hurtful way. So try to look for ways like that where they can get those big emotions out, and then they're ready to come back. In these challenging situations where your child has these big moments, it's okay to empathize with them. For your child who doesn't want to stop playing with their friend and go home for dinner, Explain to them the situation. For example, you could say, staying longer is just not a choice. I'm sorry, but we have to go home because it's time to go and cook and eat dinner. And your friend has to get ready for dinner with her family as well. So it's really not an option to stay. In a situation like that, try to give your child a choice. Ask them, do you want to go ahead and jump in the car yourself and buckle yourself up? Or do you want me to help you? Put you in there and help you get buckled up. It can help with the situation when you're able to give your child some control when they don't have control over the other things going on. With that thought in mind, look for times throughout the day when you can give your child a choice between 2 or 3 different options. These can include things like choosing between a couple of different outfits to wear for the day, or choosing between a couple different snack options when they come home from school. Have some different options available and let them pick which one they would like. Maybe ask them, do you want to watch this show, or do you want to watch a board or play a board game with the family after dinner? Allowing your child some choices in their day gives them some control, and that helps build competence and self-confidence, because there's many things that your child has no say-so in the day. So when you let them have some choices, it can really help and lessen some of those other battles. Now, I know we're talking about young children here in this section, but it's worth mentioning that this is also a tactic that works well for older children. And it can include things like, as they're getting older at school, giving them a choice in which extracurricular activity they want to participate in. Maybe your family has a rule that you have to do something at school. You have to be involved in some club or some sport, but let them choose which one it is. This just gives them a voice, and it helps prevent some of those challenging behaviors. In your resource, we do have some websites that list other suggestions and tips on challenging behavior with those younger children as well as the other ages, so be sure and check that out. Now let's move on to our next age, which is that school age. As children get older, they are seeking more independence, but they still need parental structure. Oftentimes these school-age children, you'll see whining and dawdling, and it's all common in this school-age group. You may also experience defiance and talking back. They're testing boundaries at this age. And as parents, we may struggle with being the parent versus being their friend, but we also need to set the limits, because that's what they're expecting from us and what they need. Now that your child is older, though, you can have more discussions about their behavior in a more interactive way. So when you're talking about their behavior, try to avoid those pointed judgmental statements and look for more observational ones so that you can hear from them on what the situation looked like from their point of view. For example, if their brother and sister are fighting, don't just say, "You're always so mean to your sister." Instead, try something like, "I heard you yelling at your sister after school today. What was going on when that happened?" That way, you're showing that you're receptive to their feelings and their points of view, rather than just making a snap judgment on the situation. But remember, when it comes to consequences, you're the parent and ultimately the decision maker. Encourage empathy. When you see that your child's behavior is making another person feel sad or hurt, point that out to your child and ask your child how they would feel if someone did the same to them. Sometimes they just need to sit and think for a minute about how they're making someone else feel. You can also try a reset time, which is just some time away. Like I said, sometimes my kiddos just need to go to their room and decompress a little bit. This will give a child time to calm down, process their feelings, and then prepare to have a discussion with you instead of a fight. So that can be helpful. We mentioned that whining and defiance are common ways that school-age children misbehave. Offer choices to allow your child to make decisions and teach them to consider the consequences of their choices, such as, you can put the iPad away, or you can give it to me and then I'll put it away. Meaning they're maybe not going to get it back as quickly, right? Use first then phrases. A subtle change in the way you word your phrases turns a consequence into a reward. For example, your 3rd grader needs to pick up his toys, all of his Legos he had out that he was putting together, but he wants to play a game now. He wants to move on. Rather than saying, "You can't go play a game because you need to pick up your toys first," tell him, "First, pick up those Legos, then you can play a game. Then he's getting a reward for what he's doing. This helps them think about the situation in a more positive way. Now let's talk about lying. Unlike younger kids who lie because they often don't distinguish between reality and fantasy, when a school-age child lies, they know that they are lying. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that you address this by letting your child know immediately that you are aware they are not telling the truth. Instead of a harsh punishment, though, try the following statement. Just tell them, I want you to only tell me the truth. And in return, I will always tell you the truth. That way we can always believe each other. Or you could even say you'll get in much less trouble if you tell the truth instead of lying. Now, if your child continues to lie even after you've addressed the matter and it's persistent, consult a counselor or a pediatrician or a mental health professional to figure out what's going on and how to help your child. That's one of those times when you want to seek professional help. Now let's turn more to those teenage years. These can be particularly trying. I love that picture there because that's sometimes how my teenagers feel and how I feel. In some ways, our teenagers can act almost like adults, while in other ways, they can still hold on to some of those childlike attitudes. They may demand your help one minute and claim they don't need you the next. Teens are trying to find their own path in the world, and this can be a bumpy ride for everyone involved and everyone around them. The key with teens is to respond calmly and try not to overreact. Staying calm will help to de-escalate the situation, and as we mentioned earlier, you may have to take a break from each other for that to happen. That's what I've found works with my teenagers. Listening is another helpful strategy. If your teen's upset, sometimes they just need a listening ear to talk about what happened without us interrupting or judging. They're not looking for a solution. They're just looking to talk through it and for validation. Validation is very important here, letting them know that you hear them and you hear their point of view. When determining consequences with these older children, with our teenagers, partner with them and put it in writing. The video talked about having those consequences pre-planned. So you know what the consequence is going to be. Your teen knows what the consequence is going to be. And have them help you with that process. Have them determine what's fair. What should the punishment be for this action? Because when they're invested in the decision, they have a voice, and sometimes it can help mitigate those behaviors. So talking through these consequences in advance, and then everyone's on the same page. By doing this, it allows them to have more buy-in when they step over boundaries. Now, one of the places where teenagers and parents tend to butt heads a lot is over media, any type of media, TV, video, music. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends especially that parents have a media agreement with their teens that spells out clear guidelines and what the consequences are if they decide to break the rules, because this is a big point of contention. So we are dropping a link to that site in your chat box, so be sure and check that out and see if that's something that could help your family to overcome some of those challenging behaviors when it comes to those media. Some more ideas for teens who have outgrown timeouts, although some of our teens would really be thrilled to be left alone. It may be more of a reward instead of a consequence. But some things that you can consider, and again, these are proactive. So you've talked about these consequences in advance. You can remove electronics. Teens are going to feel like you're removing a body part if you take away their phone. But this can be an effective consequence. Just make sure there's a realistic timeline to the consequence, so it will be discipline and not punishment. Take away time with friends. This can be really difficult. Teenagers are very reliant on their friends, but if that behavior involves their friends, this could be a good discipline style to use. A break from their buddies may remind them to make better decisions in the future. You may need to tighten the rules. As our children grow, we give them more and more and more freedom. But if your teen breaks the rules, it's actually an indicator that they might not be ready for so much freedom. Of course, they're not going to admit that, but if you start reducing those privileges slowly and incrementally, it may help. But if you do take away some privileges from your teenager, be sure you establish a time in the future to sit down with them and reevaluate that privilege and whether or not they've matured enough to be able to handle that extra freedom. See if you feel like you can give it back to them. So have a timeline for relooking it if you do have to tighten the rules. Now, Dr. Ken Ginsburg talks about discipline in terms of a puzzle with the edges being boundaries. So the edges of the puzzle are boundaries. And your children have certain privileges that reside within those boundaries. These boundaries are there because they're there to keep our kids safe. Now, if the kids break the rules and they go outside those protective edges, that's where discipline comes in, and that's where you need to have a plan in place. So some of those privileges that they've earned as they've matured and grown may need to be taken away temporarily. But if that happens, talk to your children. They're old enough to sit down and talk through the process with you. So talk with them to understand why they're being taken away and talk about what point in the future you'll relook that privilege and see if you can give them that freedom back. Another idea is your teen may need to perform an act of restitution. If your teen's behavior has hurt someone or they break something that belongs to someone else, have them come up with a plan to make amends. This can be done in various ways. Ask your teen for input on what they think they should do to make it up. So those are some ideas for how to put discipline in place for the different ages. So I'm going to turn it back over to Emily to talk about when you should go beyond the home and seek some help.
Right. So we have discussed a variety of general and specific strategies to help with challenging behaviors. However, if your child or teen shows behavioral, emotional, or learning problems beyond what is typical for pre-adolescents or teens, such as depression, anxiety, or eating disorders. Perhaps they're displaying at-risk behaviors like drinking, drug use, sex, violence, skipping school, self-harming, shoplifting, criminal acts, or if they're talking or even joking about committing suicide, please seek help as soon as possible. And we're putting a guide in your chat box for helping troubled teens. Also, if you've tried some of the strategies that we have discussed today and there's no improvement, or if you feel like you would like to talk to someone about the behavior, there are options for families through medical providers, as well as educational and community resources. For military families, we also want to highlight 2 additional resources. Military OneSource has anonymous counseling sessions, and the Military Family Life Counselors also offer free counseling services and are located at military installations around the world. We've included these links in your chat box. You can see them there for more information on both of those resources. So please feel free to utilize those. We hope that we have offered you some strategies and tools to consider for your family in addressing challenging behaviors. Remember that as parents, we can make a powerful impact and a positive difference in our children's lives when we are intentional with the structure that we provide them, when we are generous in our praise and unconditional in our love. We would like to thank you all so much for joining this webinar today. We'd like to invite you to take our survey for today's webinar, and you can do that by clicking on the survey link that's there in your chat box or by using the QR code there on your screen. It only takes a couple of minutes, and we do appreciate your feedback. Once you are in the survey, you'll click on Webinar Survey and type in the 4-digit webinar number, which is 6825. Then you'll hit Submit at the end of the survey. If you don't fill it out now, following this webinar, you will receive an email invitation to take it. We use this to make ongoing improvements to our webinar series, as well as add new topics of interest and provide feedback to our funders. So we appreciate you taking this. If you do have questions, concerns, or educational related issues for your military connected children, please feel free to reach out to our military student consultants or MSCs. They are the premier source to provide you with one-on-one help for all of your questions. To contact a military student consultant, you can email them at msc@militarychild.org. The Wellbeing Toolkit was developed for parents, school professionals, behavioral and mental health professionals, and community leaders. This tool is full of resources for all aspects of the military connected child's well-being, and we would love for you to explore it on our website and share it with others. If you have missed one of our previous webinars, or if you'd like to share this session, the recordings can be found on our website, which is militarychild.org. They can also be found on our YouTube channel, and we're going to put that in the chat box for you. If you are interested in obtaining a certificate of completion after today's live presentation, please complete that online survey and contact research@militarychild.org. And you can see the link to the webinar survey is there in your chat. And then you'll also see that YouTube channel where you can find all of our previously recorded webinars.
Emily, someone had said the link was not working to the survey. I checked it and it's working on my site. So please try again or try scanning the QR code. And if not, if it's not working for you, that you will get a link sent to you. But please let us know if you're still having issues.
Yes, thank you so much. And actually, I am going to scoot back to that slide real quick with the QR code right here. You can try using the QR code. It should be working.
Okay, yeah, the QR code works for me.
Okay.
The link works for me. So I'm not sure if it's something, if you're on it at a school, it may be blocking it on your computer. Sometimes that happens. The school, or if you're a GS employee, sometimes the government employees block different sites. But I believe they'll still send it to you after the fact for you to do the survey. So that may be the problem.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. I don't know what else to tell you unless just wait to receive that link in your email.
Okay. Thank you for checking that. I also would like to tell you about webinars that are presented specifically for our Spanish-speaking military community. Please join Mariela and Yasmina at the end of each month for these special webinar presentations funded by HEB. The next En Español webinar will be on Thursday, August 28th, and it will be on the same topic on challenging behaviors. As with the rest of our webinars, these do begin at noon Eastern Time. We are also very excited to offer 2 regional global training summits this year. We'd love for you to join us either in Atlanta, Georgia on September 22nd or in Austin, Texas on September 26th. Registration is now open and you can check the link in your chat box for more details on our regional GTS summits. You can also use the QR code there on your screen. We'd also love for you to join us for some of our upcoming webinars. Next Tuesday, August 12th, we'll be presenting Back to School Basics. And then on Tuesday, August 19th, we'll be presenting Raising a Confident Child in an Uncertain Word. Excuse me, an uncertain world. I apologize for that. That makes more sense. Registration links are in your chat box, and remember that our webinars do begin at noon Eastern Standard Time. All right, we'd like to give a very special thanks to the Department of the Air Force School Liaison Program for making today's webinar possible. Thank you so much to all of you for your interest and your participation. We hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you again.